Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving into something I find absolutely fascinating. We're going to demystify that seemingly magical intuition of people who can walk into a room and just instantly read the hidden dynamics. You know the type, right? They catch the absolute tiniest facial expressions, they sense unspoken tension, and they spot lies almost immediately. Now, most people call this a sharp intuition or some kind of rare gift. But today, we're going to look at what's really happening beneath the surface, because the truth is, this ability can actually be a pretty harsh psychological burden. So, why exactly do some people see what everyone else just completely misses? Well, it turns out, when we strip away all the mysticism, we find that this isn't some psychic ability or magic at all. It's actually rooted in hard neuroscience. To understand this, we have to look at how their brains physically process information differently. It's a fundamental shift in how they literally absorb the world around them. That brings us to Section 1, the neuroscience of hyperperception, or your brain's 24/7 data machine. While an average brain might just accept a situation at face value, a hyperperceptive brain operates as a constant, nonstop data collection machine. It utilizes a high-speed, subconscious processing phenomenon called thin slicing. The crucial point here is this high-speed data processing. This is where the brain's threat detection center, the amygdala, works in absolute overdrive. It instantly scans very narrow windows of experience to detect incongruences. So, when someone's words don't quite match their body language, bam, the nervous system instantly flags a data error. And the literal speed of that processing is mind-blowing. Dr. Paul Ekman coined the term microexpressions for these fleeting facial movements that flash by in just 1/15th to 1/25th of a second. Imagine that. Neurologically, these happen because our emotional brain reacts way faster than our conscious brain can suppress the feeling. So, picture a coworker saying, "I'm so happy for your promotion." A perceptive brain's visual cortex operates like a supercomputer in that exact moment. In a fraction of a second, it processes the voice rising half a tone, notices the lack of eye crinkling, and catches that microscopic, totally involuntary flicker of jealousy. This unconscious detection of a lie or a hidden fear, it happens instantly. And the crazy part, the brain doesn't even have to consciously think about it. It is exactly like tasting salt in a bowl of soup. Think about it, you don't sit there and analytically ponder the chemical composition of sodium chloride, right? Your tongue simply reports the truth instantly. For these highly perceptive individuals, catching a lie is just as reflexive. What's really interesting here is how human beings communicate on two entirely distinct channels, the verbal and the nonverbal. Average perception is kind of like watching a stage play, right? You just believe the actor's words. But the hyperperceptive brain, it is always looking behind the velvet curtain. It completely bypasses the script and instead notices the broken props, the prompter's hand, and the actor's nervous sweat. Which leads us into Trap 1, the accidental villain. Because this pattern recognition is so automatic, perceptive individuals often see the terrifying insecurity behind a social mask, and this pushes them into some incredibly exhausting psychological traps. In Greek mythology, Cassandra was given the gift to see the future, but she was cursed so that no one would ever actually believe her warnings. Highly perceptive people are basically modern Cassandras. They'll go on a first date with someone presenting as this perfect, polished gentleman, but within 15 minutes, their radar scans the rushed enthusiasm as a hidden manipulation script. They see the disaster coming from a mile away, but warning their friends? That just makes them look paranoid, picky, or negative. And honestly, things get even worse in the workplace. Imagine a complaining coworker who consistently plays the victim to get sympathy. The perceptive person sees that this coworker is actually just missing deadlines and using tears to manipulate public opinion. But here's the catch. When they expose this truth, it rarely earns them respect. Instead, it triggers projection and ego defense. The exposed person goes through intense shame, and to protect their collapsing ego, they turn the perceptive person into the cold, arrogant villain. Moving on to Tap 2, the detective loop. The sheer pain of constantly being cast as the villain breeds isolation, and that isolation pushes them to trust only their own analysis. To prevent getting hurt again, they build heavy psychological armor through this looping risk control mechanism. Suddenly, a totally innocent compliment is viewed as a setup for a favor. A text that's 30 minutes late, it isn't because the person is busy, it's analyzed as a deliberate sign of distance. They fall right into confirmation bias, constantly scanning every tired glance as a massive threat to the relationship. It's like they never get fooled. They win every single mental game. But the tragic price is that they can never, ever truly relax. They are like someone who has hearing so sensitive they can hear the microscopic cracks in a building before it collapses.
Sure, it helps them survive, but it entirely destroys their ability to just sit back and enjoy the music. For them, unconditional trust becomes an absolute luxury.
And that brings us to trap 3, the emotional sponge. You see, this emotional exhaustion isn't just from overthinking. It's the heavy, invisible burden of carrying unspoken truths. They essentially become an emotional dumping ground. Imagine attending a close friend's wedding. Everyone around you is cheering, but through the groom's anxious glance or the bride's forced smile, you see that the marriage is fundamentally built on sand. You actually see the collapse at the exact moment of celebration, yet you still have to raise a glass and smile. It is the profound loneliness of knowing the Titanic is sinking while you are forced to keep dancing in first class. Because they understand everyone's needs silently, they become perfect diplomats. They know exactly how to act to make others feel completely comfortable. But tragically, because they're always so busy healing others, no one ever reads them. No one sees where they are hurting. They become like a glass wall. They see right through everyone, but everyone else just sees their own reflection. So, how do we fix this? Let's get into our principles for mental survival, escaping the traps. How do you actually escape? You can't just flip a switch and turn off 20/20 vision, right? So the goal is to master the mind using 3 core principles. Let's look at principle 1, strategic ignorance. This is the art of knowing everything, but intentionally choosing not to react to everything. It's all about separating truth from responsibility. Let's say you see that fake coworker sucking up to the boss. Okay, that's the truth. But does it actually impact your responsibilities or your KPIs? If not, just treat it like a passing gray cloud. You see it's gray, but you absolutely don't need to fly up there and push it away. You have to drop the ego of needing to be the lord of truth. Principle 2 is to accept social masks. Perceptive people often suffer simply because their standards for authenticity are way too high. Once you look through a psychological lens, you start to realize that masks aren't always malicious. Most of the time, they hide deep, deep wounds. You know that loud, bragging guy? He's actually just a terrified boy craving attention. When you realize this, your disgust fades into deep empathy and radical acceptance. You see the mask, but you don't rip it off. And finally, principle 3, forgive the blind spots at the present. To escape that utterly exhausting detective loop, you really have to stop trying to perfectly control the future. If your intuition says there's a 20% chance a relationship might end badly, accept that 20% risk so you can actually enjoy the 80% joy right now. Living fully requires the courage to get hurt. If you obsessively analyze exactly how sharp every single thorn is, you are never actually going to smell the rose. You have to allow yourself to be intentionally blind sometimes. When you finally master these 3 principles, something truly magical happens. Your brutal gift evolves. You transform from a defensive, cold X-ray machine that exposes every tiny flaw in a sheer panic into a quiet lighthouse. You still see all the hidden rocks and those dangerous currents, absolutely. But instead of panicking, you calmly, wisely guide your ship to safety. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final vital thought. If you see yourself in these concepts, please know you aren't alone. But ask yourself right now, which of these 3 traps do you fall into the most? And more importantly, are you brave enough to put down your armor, forgive the blind spots, and finally let your mind rest? Welcome to